We talked about our organic molecules, our carbohydrates, our fats, and our proteins. DNA and RNA. Fabulous. All right, so we have these specialized proteins called nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are the Legos that build you. They form your DNA. What DNA is the blueprint that makes you you. You got a little bit of it from your mom, a little bit from your dad. They got a little bit. So from the beginning of the dawn of time, your lineage is contributed to your individual DNA. That's crazy. That's craziness. And it's only these 4 proteins, these 4 amino acids in different combinations, in different repeats, that give you brown eyes versus blue eyes versus blonde hair versus brown hair, all of that. 4 nucleotides. The DNA, as we know, I don't think I'm telling you any shocking information at this point, is 2 strands bonded together that end up spiraling around each other in what we call a double helix. Now, if the body needs something and says, hey, we need the instruction manual to make this protein, we're running low on this specific protein, the DNA can unzip itself, give that ingredients list and that instruction list in the form of RNA. RNA is a single strand versus the double strand. And then RNA can take that out of the nucleus and find the appropriate person who's going to be able to make that particular protein. So we have like our messenger RNA, which is just that. He takes the message out of the nucleus. We have our transcription RNA, he's the one that made the copy. We have our ribosomal RNA. Ribosomes are the factory that make proteins. So I just deliver it to the appropriate factory and we're done. We have successfully achieved our mission. The very basis of your DNA is sugar. We truly are made of sugar. We are sugar-based beings. And then we have these nucleotides that contribute to these sugars. They're called nucleotides because of their nitrogen. Remember, nitrogen is one of our major elements. We are nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen-based beings. And so these nucleotides are named that because of the major element, nitrogen. Picture. All right, so we have these 4 nucleotides: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Now, only 2 of these bond together, and the other 2 bond together. Did we go over this yesterday? Yes. Say it. Apple tree, put your car in the garage. So we know that adenine and thymine bind together. Cytosine and guanine bind together. And then we remember U2. The thymine turns to uracil in the RNA. U2. UT. If you're a UT grad, whatever, just trying to remember that the thymine T converts to uracil U in the RNA. And because we know that they can only bind with that one other, it makes it very, very easy for us to construct DNA from RNA. If I have half, I know for a fact what the other half has to look like. Because if I have something like A, G, T, C, I know exactly who has to bind with that to make the other half. So that's how we how we replicate and make stuff out of this DNA. Is everybody okay with the nucleotides and how they're bonding together?
Miss Huff, I have a question.
Yes.
So I know yesterday in class you wrote on the board how to do like the chain, like what connects with what. I got a little lost. I got a little bit lost on that.
Here's what I can do. Look what I can do. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to type out an RNA. I'm going to type out half of a DNA sequence. And I'm just making it up, okay? It doesn't actually, I have no idea what genetic sequence I am typing here. But I'm going to have, there is half of a genetic sequence. How do I figure out the other half? This is RNA, but I want to take this, I want to wind it back into DNA. So let's figure out what the other half is. So I know that C binds with G, G binds with C, T binds with
Okay.
You see how we did that?
Yeah, so it's up and down.
Up and down?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like, so C, like you have the string and then you say C goes with G, G goes with C, T goes with A. I got it. It makes sense now.
Okay, good, good. You're very welcome. Hooray! So this nucleic acid forms when these sugar and phosphate groups join together. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail as far as DNA replication. You could take an entire 16-week class on nothing but genetics and heredity and never even scratch the surface. It's crazy. The number of sequences, the number of what they call tandem repeats is what makes dominant traits in you. So you're like, for me, example, my mom has brown eyes and my dad has these piercing blue eyes. I really wish I'd gotten his, but it's okay. It's not like I can do anything about it. So the dominant gene, my tandem repeats, gave me dominant brown eyes. But guess what I've got locked in the closet back there? I got blue eyes in me somewhere. They're just not the trait that shows. When it's a trait that shows, it's dominant. If it's a trait that doesn't show, it's recessive. So somewhere in my DNA, there is somewhere a sequence for blue eyes. So if I had children, there's a chance that they could be brown-eyed, and there is a chance they could be blue-eyed, even if me and my husband or significant other both have brown eyes. Because if we both carry the sequence for blue, and we both contribute the sequence to blue, the child will end up with blue eyes. So that's where the genetics and the tandem repeats and the dominant versus recessive, oh my gosh, I get too excited, I could talk about it all day long. But really, really pretty interesting, but it all comes down to those 4 nucleotides and how are they in order.
So what would happen if you have, some people have albino?
Oh my goodness, so great, fabulous questions. The question is, what happens if you have someone like an albino or some genetic mutation? So there's a bunch of things that can cause genetic mutations. let me just take, rather than doing the specific albinism, let me just say random genetic mutation. So when the sperm hits the egg, sometimes the DNA gets kind of scrambled up a little bit. Our DNA, our basic blueprint says, in general, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 nose, and melanin. Melanin in the skin helps protect us from the radiation of the sun. People have different volumes of melanin, and that's what gives you your skin color. Problem is in the albinism, their genetic sequence was set to some sort of weird off default that said no melanin. That's a mutation because it's against the norm. Humans are supposed to have it. Radiation. That's why radiation is so dangerous. I have here my DNA sequence, right here. Everyone see it? That's my DNA sequence. Suddenly, I have radiation, and what radiation does is it basically, you have now radiation, and he just kind of goes swip, swap, swip, swap, swip, swap, swip, swap, swip, swap, and he starts messing with you on a genetic level. So then what happens when you pass that messed up DNA to your kid? They get messed up DNA and they have mutations. So there's a ton of stuff that can just scramble up the DNA and cause it to have these they're now genetic mutations. Like albinism, oh my God, there's so many. Dwarfism. Dachshunds are bred with a form of dwarfism. Really, any of the genetic mutations that you can have, like spina bifida, Down syndrome, all of those have to do with an incorrect sequence and the chromosomes, which is the DNA contribution. A great question. So it's just scrambled up DNA. And then once the DNA gets scrambled and incorrect, then it's the incorrect DNA that gets replicated. So once you have damage to the DNA on a genetic level, that is the DNA that's going to replicate. And so that's a big problem because now you're replicating incorrect DNA sequence and there's no way to get it back right. So that's a problem. We don't really think about it as a problem in our dog world. I mean, we got a long-bodied, short-legged dog. We breed it to another long-bodied, short-legged dog. You get long-bodied, short-legged dogs. Problem is we're actually perpetuating a genetic mutation. It's called achondroplastic dwarfism. Let's break that down medical term style, shall we? A, without. Chondro, cartilage, plastic.
I keep forgetting what chondro is. What is it?
Chondro is cartilage. Chondro is cartilage, plastic, to change. The way that your long bones grow is you have these two ends, right? Think of just your typical dog bone, like long bone. The ends have cartilage in the growth plate. And what happens is that cartilage turns into bone and causes it to get longer. We lay down more cartilage, it turns into bone, we get longer, lay down more cartilage, is everyone with me? Problem is with achondroplastic, I don't have any cartilage to lay down. So what happens is the bones are being told to grow from growth hormone. They grow out wide because they can't grow long. There's no cartilage formation to change. And that's why you get these really short, but really wide kind of twisty bones. Think about humans can also get achondroplastic dwarfism. One of my best friends has achondroplastic dwarfism. And his arms are super short, and they're kind of, I can't even do it, they're kind of twisted, and his legs are kind of bowed-legged. But his trunk, his non-long bones, if he and I sit down next to each other, he's actually a little bit taller than me. But when we stand up, he's up to about here on me because of the achondroplastic dwarfism. So that's a genetic mutation that we are now on purpose breeding into that dog to make it look like a dachshund. And that's where we have some issues with our purebred dog breeds. Because when you breed in a trait and it shows up, you get all of these evil spirits coming in the back door. So that's why you get
a lot because their bones tend to grow faster than their body, right?
Yeah, and so because also with dachshunds, I think you guys have been talking with Ms. Regalia. You guys started your dogs. And this is why you have purebred breed dogs that have propensity for specific genetic mutations. For example, when I say Labrador, you think hip dysplasia. When I say Dachshund, you think IVDD. Everyone know IVDD? Intervertebral disc disease. When I say Boxer, you think cancer, mast cell tumors. When I say Rottweiler, you think hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That's a big word. Hyper, extra or excessive, trophic, formation of cardio, myopathy, disease or condition. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a disease or condition that causes excessive growth of the heart muscle. I know, right? RNA is how we get messages in and out of the nucleus. We know that thymine turns to uracil in the RNA, and we have 3 different forms. We have 3 different titles, and this tells us essentially what is this little RNA doing. We have our transfer RNA. This is where the body has said, hey, DNA, we're running low on this protein. DNA says RNA, take down some notes. And RNA's like, on it, boss. And he starts writing down the notes. He's transcribing. He's transferring the information to himself. Then he has messenger RNA, where he's messaging out of the nucleus, and then he finds the correct ribosome or factory worker, and he's now ribosomal RNA. He fits it through like a ticker tape. The ribosome reads the recipe and creates and forms the new protein. And then the protein is out of the hands of RNA. The ribosome then takes over and starts preparing and packaging for the FedEx delivery of this protein to wherever it is it needs to go. So these 3 terms, transfer RNA, messenger RNA, and ribosomal RNA, is simply just telling you what is the little strand of RNA doing at that moment. What is his job description right then? That's it. That's about the depth we're going to go. So you have your test, what, 5th period?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's after. Internal and external? Yeah. You want me to do a bit of review with you in between writing slides? Lips. Labial. Skin. Derm or dermato. Nose. Or, yeah, nasal or rhino. Eyes. Yeah, ophtho, ophthalmo, oculo. Oto. This is your ears. It's all of the O words, isn't it? There's so many O words. Otoscope, a tool or instrument used for looking at your ears. Ophthalmoscope is the thing that they shine in your eyes when you get your eyes checked. Ophthalmo and oto. Let's go through some more O words. Tummy button. Yeah, omphalo. Kind of depends on who taught you how you pronounce it. Omphalo. Claws. Onycho. Onycho. Testicles. Yay! Orchid. They look like a flower that hasn't bloomed yet. I'm trying to think of other old ones. I don't think of any others. Uterus. Hystero. I always think about, I'm hysterical because I have a uterus. That's where the word hysterical came from, you know. The medical term for uterus. Rude. Give me another term for uterus. Metro.
Metro.
I'm gonna put Mitra or Metro. I'm gonna put a mental image in your head that you'll never, ever, ever be able to get out ever again, and it's gonna mess you up. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What other meaning does the word metro have? When I say metro, what do you think of? The bus. So when I don't know why. You guys know now I live my life in a mental movie. So I'm in my car following a bus, and in my mind, I can't even remember the day this happened. I was coming back from Texas Heart Institute. And I'm following one of those stupid like buses that stops every 3 feet. And it's middle of rush hour. I can't get off the road. And so my brain, Doug, just starts entertaining himself. And I start thinking metro, uterus. And then I start thinking of the people as little reproductive eggs. And that as they're coming off the bus, and like, oh, there's some more eggs going out into the environment. And I don't know why. It became very disturbing, kind of weird. It got weird. And so as metro, I think about people and that you're now following a uterus around the city. Yeah, eggs on a bus. If you're taking the bus, you're an egg on the bus. Here's that typical picture of that double helix DNA and the single helix RNA. Here's just a picture for you little visual learners. Here we have the nucleus. My DNA has received an SOS message. Hey, we need to make something. He unwinds, makes a copy of the ingredients list and the instruction manual, which is now messenger RNA. So we have transcription RNA. Here we have our messenger, which leaves the nucleus, finds the appropriate ribosome, becomes ribosomal RNA. The ribosome, reading, and following the instructions and creating a chain of the protein it's been told to create. Oh. You guys are really hard to read because it doesn't seem to matter. I get it, I don't get it, I'm comprehending, I'm sound asleep with my eyes open. you have the exact same eyeball, well, it's not a facial expression, but the exact same eyeball look, regardless of what I'm saying. Another picture. There's for my little visual learners. If you've ever taken any kind of even most basic biology course, you've heard the 3 letters ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Tri meaning what? 3. Essentially, this is what provides energy for the cell. I have 3 phosphorus molecules bonded together. I'm going to break one of the bonds. What do we know is released if I break the bond? Energy is released. So I release the energy the cell needs, and then I go back in and I pick up another phosphorus and rebond. Break the bond, reform a bond. Break the bond, reform a bond. That's how we are providing the cell with the energy it needs to perform the action it's supposed to perform. We're taking ATP, breaking one off. Now what do I have? Yeah, it's right there, hooked on phonics. ADP. Di stands for what? 2. Diphosphate back to tri. Break the bond. Pew! Di back to tri. Break the bond. Pew! Di back to tri. That's over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. For the length of the life of the cell. That's how we get our energy. Breaking and reforming bonds. That's it. That's all there is to it. And then when you see the letters ATP, some of you are like in the corner and curled up in the fetal position. That's it. All we're talking about is breaking and reforming a bond of one phosphorus molecule. Any questions about that? Everybody's okay? You guys are still taking some notes? Okay. Liver. Hepat. Stomach. Gastro. Intestines. Nice. Entero. What's the first part of the small intestine called? The duodenum or duodenum. Again, depends on who taught you. The second part, the jejunum, and the third, ileum. I or E? E. Because where is ileum with an I? It's what I call the sassy bone. And the way that I remember that, if you think about how your intestines look, they're kind of convoluted, they're kind of just wriggly like spaghetti. They kind of mimic the shape of the letter E, whereas the letter I, in my mind, looks like it can turn it very easily into the shape of a bone. So that's how I remember ileum with an I is bones, ileum with an E, super spaghetti. That's your intestines. Tongue. Lingual or we got a team effort here. Glosso. Jaw. And naph or napho. Heart. Muscle. Nice. Pneumo. Oh, see, I turned it around on you. I did the med term and your brains just came to a screeching halt. Pneumo. Lungs. Also pulmo, as in pulmonary. Oh, blepharum. Your eyelid. Kylo. Hair. Nephro. Kidney. Reno. Yeah, being a cheeky monkey, that's also kidney. And being a cheeky monkey. Who's gonna be giving themselves some hepatitis this weekend? You have to work. Well, I don't. Actually, I do. I have one quiz and a PowerPoint and a final to get started, hopefully before tomorrow. I'm gonna need some burgers. Give myself a little hepatitis. Very excited about that. Very excited.
It's my birthday tomorrow, so I'm going to be giving myself hepatitis this weekend.
Who said that?
Who said that? Who said that?
Leanne,
Happy birthday, Leanne.
thank you.
Tomorrow too.
Shut up! And you too?
No.
Oh.
Oh,
We have 2 birthdays tomorrow. Huzzah! That's amazing. All right. Do what?
It says birthday twin.
Oh, happy birthday, twin. All right, so why is all of this knowledge about DNA so important? Well, when we start looking at some of your courses going forward, like pharmacology, remember I said there are things that can scramble up the DNA, causing it to have an incorrect sequence that you would then pass on? There are medications that can do that as well. In fact, chemotherapy does a great job of scrambling up your DNA. Radiation, great job of scrambling up your DNA. All of the knowledge of this helps us to determine things like, how do we break down food for energy? How do our cells signal and talk to each other? How do they communicate with each other? Well, the DNA and RNA is a big part of that. And how do we transmit things like nerve impulses? Again, it's cells speaking to each other, cells communicating with each other. And once we have a fundamental understanding of how that happens, we can now start to look at things that can cause interruption in that, which is kind of the entire reason why you're here, so that you can learn to identify abnormal versus normal. That's why this is kind of so important. And I think, bam, that's the end of chapter 2, my friends. So here's what I am going to do. No, you're not leaving yet, so don't pack up. Don't groan at me. Cheeky monkey. Groan at me, tell me you're hungry. I'll just sit and torture you for the next 40 minutes. Talk about. That's weird. I sit on this side in this room. Unconscious. I didn't even know.
I thought that yesterday, how you guys moved the chair over. I'm just like.
That's weird. Unconsciously, I didn't even notice that. That's bizarre. All right, let me get in here. All right. Oh, I guess you guys don't really need to see me right now. Bam. Ha ha. All right, can you guys hear me okay though? All right. So I'm going to pull up a question bank of potential test questions. Marissa, your dog is adorable. OMG. It's kind of creepy that I can see you and you can't see me. So cute. This is like a little Yorkie or something. So cute. Anyway, I got distracted by the cuteness of the dog. So I'm going to call out some just sample questions. They may or they may not be on the test tomorrow. Don't know. The test is true and false multiple choice. And I might word some of them differently. I might, instead of giving you as a multiple choice, just ask you the answer. All right, shall we start with an easy one? Yes, Ms. Huff, we should. Thank you, random student. I'm just gonna start talking to myself. If you guys won't answer me, I just start talking to myself.
Well, we love your sound effects.
Now I'll just be my own student answering my own darn questions. Fine, I don't need any of you to have a great class in my own head. You know what? You're an adult. You're paying to be here. And if it means more to you to go grab an early lunch than to sit for the lesson that you've paid pretty handsomely for, you're adults. There is nothing chaining you to this desk. You'll be marked absent.
Miss Huff, I can't see anything.
That would be because I have my camera off. Because you don't need to see me reading questions off my computer.
You're so right.
I know. Usually am. True or false? Anything that occupies space also has mass. That is in fact true. I had you worried there for a second, didn't I? True or false? Household ammonia has a pH of 12, meaning that it is strongly acidic. I've got some dissension in my ranks.
False.
It is in what? So it is in fact false. Why is it false?
12 is a base.
12 is going to be a basic, not an acidic. The lower the number, the more acidic. The higher the number, the more basic. Good job. In a strand of DNA, true or false? In a strand of DNA, thiamine will bind with guanine. Why is that false? Yeah, you're not putting the garage in the tree, are you? I guess you could, but that would be some pretty jacked up DNA. All right, tell me the 4 major elements. So we've got carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. I'm just rewording, don't panic. The test tomorrow is multiple choice true and false. I'm rewording some questions so that you're practicing multiple answers. What 2 components of an atom are found in the nucleus? Protons and neutrons. What is in a cloud around the nucleus? Electrons. What 2 components make up the atomic weight? Protons and neutrons. For why don't electrons? They're so small they don't contribute. Which component makes up the atomic number?
Protons.
Yeah, you're right. Say it with confidence. Protons. You're right. Protons make up the atomic number. How many electrons does the first shell hold? 2. Nice. And the second? And the third? And the fourth? There we go. What is the average pH of a companion animal's body? 7.4 would be the average. What is the range? 7.35. Very nicely done, you guys. Very nicely done. Hey, what's a buffer? What does a buffer do? It neutralizes acidity. Remember we talked about cows and their saliva is a natural buffer to help take down the acid environment so they don't develop an esophageal ulcer. That was a lot of medical words. Did everyone follow me on that? That's pretty amazing considering you've only been here 2.5 weeks. What part of the atom has a positive charge and a negative charge and a neutral charge? What is it called if I have an atom that gains or loses an electron? An ion. If I am an atom that loses an electron, what happens to my charge? It becomes more positive. Remember yesterday we said, think of the electrons like bad feelings. And if I get rid of some bad feelings, I become much more positive. But if I take in bad feelings, I become more negative. So I now have a positive and a negative, and what do we know about those? They attract. What kind of bond is that? If it's a bond between ions, it is a ionic bond. What kind of bond is it when we share? There you go. Because how do we know sharing is? Caring is? There you go. There you go. See, it works. If an atom has a different number of neutrons and protons, what do we refer it to as? An isotope. Isotope. What kind of compounds or... Wow, Doug just fell hard off the wheel on that one. What kind of compounds do not contain a hydrocarbon? Inorganic. Organic do. What is the most abundant organic molecule in your body? So think about the organic molecules we talked about. We talked about what? Carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleics. Proteins are the most abundant organic compound that we discussed. Does everybody understand that? I have a fat, and this fat only contains single bonds. What is it called? It is a saturated single bonds. What is it called if I have one double bond? Mono unsaturated. How about more than one double bond? Poly unsaturated. Very, very good. Ooh, so we did mention the phospholipid bilayer. And we talked about how they have heads and tails. Is it the head or the tail that is hydrophilic? How do you remember that? Because the bison love a fight. The bison love a fight. Hydrophobic is at the tails where all the scared little babies are. Good. That's about the depth to which we're going to go on this test tomorrow. Is everybody, any questions, comments, concerns? And like I said, it has, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 50 questions, and I've timed it out for 35 minutes.
You said you have a study guide on your website, correct?
I do. It's called Testable Material.
Okay,
And she has
thank
this
you.
recording. You are putting this
Although,
up, right?
where is that? This recording, so the old recordings I'm gonna put up. This recording will not be available online until after the test. All right. So I've got about 15 minutes left. Not sure why everyone's packing up. So we're gonna do a howdy handshake with the first part of the next chapter, the amazing cell. Now, if you notice on the Moodle, the amazing cell chapter 3 is actually part 1 and 2. There are 2 parts. It's actually just one PowerPoint, but some of my pictures didn't compress, and it made the file like super duper humongous, and I couldn't load it all as one file, so I had to split it in half. So there's really, it's all in chapter 3. I just, because of the size of the file, I had to split it in half. So this first part, we're going to talk about the structure, the phospholipid membrane. And then in the part 2 of chapter 3, we talk about the organelles, what makes up the cell. So now that we have discovered, atoms, we've started bonding them together to make molecules, we're now into cells. And cells are the basic unit of everything, all living things. And you can have the most basic structure, a single cell organism, or you can have an incredibly complex structure where we have billions of cells doing different jobs, working together as a community to keep me alive. Every single cell has a programmed job to do, and they will do that job to the best of their abilities at all times optimally. A liver cell will only ever do the job of a liver cell. And a kidney cell will only ever do the job of a kidney cell. They're programmed to do that. We know now what happens if my liver cell is like, screw you, Mom and Dad, I don't want to go into the family business. Bam, what do I have? Cancer. I got cancer, because all the other little cells are like, I didn't even know that was an option. And they all stop working as liver cells. Well, how well does your liver work if you don't have any functional liver cells? It doesn't. How well do you live without a liver? Yet you don't. You die without a liver. So these cells, all of these cells possess what we call genetic material. That's the nucleus, the DNA, that is the blueprint for how it should function and how should it replicate. We have multicellular organisms, that's us, dogs, cats, etc., where we have these, what we call differentiated. That's just a super fancy word for a bunch of different cells that all have different jobs. And they all do those jobs without any issue. We have to kind of break down the cell before we can start getting into more complex systems. So those are just the very basics of the cell information. Oops. So cells started out pretty simple. Right? They started out as non-nucleated, meaning they did not have a brain, they did not have a nucleus. Their genetic material was just willy-nilly all over the place inside. These cells started out and began evolving about 3 billion years ago. Prokaryote is the most simple prehistoric type of cell. Before. Leave me hanging, why don't you? Karyote means nucleus. So prokaryote means before nucleus. And these guys started to evolve. And they began to develop more and more complex systems for a cell, super complex. And they started housing their DNA genetic material in kind of a brain. It's like kind of the brain of the cell called the nucleus. So now we have gone from before nucleus to eukaryote. What does the prefix U stand for? Good. Good nucleus, eukaryote. So then some pretty cool stuff started happening. These two guys started working together. So our prokaryote looks over and he's sitting there in his little simple prokaryote world, genetic material just flying around everywhere. And he's looking over there at the eukaryote. And he's like, hey, what you doing over there? Eukaryote's like, just evolving. Just over here evolving, becoming complex. Prokaryote's looking at him like, but I want to become complex too. And this guy is like, hey, you can't. Well, here's the problem is that the more complex this guy got, the bigger he got. And he's now growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And the problem is, he does not have the energy at this point to sustain himself. So I'm the eukaryote now, and he's like, oh, man, I'm not going to make it. Oh my God, I have no energy at all. Prokaryote's over here, kind of laughing to himself, and is like, hey, you said that I couldn't evolve. Now, obviously, am I simplifying this to the nth degree? Yes, I'm doing a dramatization. Prokaryote goes, you know what, I can't evolve, but you know what I have that you need is energy. I have energy and abundance, and I can create energy, and watch this, and I can replicate myself to make even more energy. Eukaryote goes, well, how is that going to help me, buddy? You're over there, I'm over here. Prokaryote says, well, look how big you got. I'm a fraction of the size. I could easily incorporate myself into you and provide you with the energy that you need, but I get to keep my own DNA. I don't want to share yours. I want my own. And eukaryote goes, hey, that's a pretty great deal. You know, you can come on over, incorporate. And so prokaryote incorporates in, and now eukaryote has all the energy that he needs. And if he needs a little bit more, he goes, hey, little buddy, need a little more juice. And prokaryote just goes, and he replicates himself into a second one. And now he's got 2 worth of performing and producing energy. And so that's how we ended up with the powerhouse of the cell, the mitochondria. That's the story of the mitochondria. That's the theory. Because when we look at these pictures, this is a prokaryote. Now, this is not to size. This prokaryote has got his DNA just willy-nilly floating around in there. If you've ever done any kind of biology, everyone has seen this picture. Everyone on the planet, I think, has seen this picture. If we look at the size difference, this prokaryote is right about the size of mitochondria. Why do we think that's the way it might have happened? Because mitochondria is the only organelle in a cell that contains its own DNA. It does not work off the DNA of the nucleus. It has its own set of blueprints. And that's why we think that it might have gone down kind of, okay, not exactly like weren't like, hey, buddy. But you get the idea that the prokaryote was incorporated into the more complex cell in order to provide the energy needed. Well, I just like to think that they became best friends and, you know, just came up and evolved together. Kind of a sweet story, I gotta say. Size is important when we talk about cells. The reason why our cells are so small is because of the limitations that we have in producing energy. I can't have a single cell my size. There's no possible way I can provide the nutrition to keep it alive. And that's why our cells are super, super, super tiny. I have the surface area and I can provide it with the energy and the nutrition it needs to stay alive. That's not to say we don't have some cells that are bigger than others. Neurons are pretty humongous compared to other cells. White blood cells are pretty humongous compared to other cells. If you take a platelet, a red blood cell, and a white blood cell, there's a huge size difference between them. So it's form following function and the ability to provide it with the nutrients and the energy. Smaller cells are also able to be governed by a single brain, a single nuclei. When my cell starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, guess what has to happen? I have to add more brains. Yes, you do, random student. You have to add more nuclei. So we end up with a multi-nucleated cell. Great example of that are your muscle cells. Your muscle cells are super, super, super long. And we have to sporadically have a new nucleus to govern that little part of the cell because the cell has grown too large for a single nucleus to accomplish that. All right, I'm gonna stop it here. We're gonna pick it up and do this on Monday. So one last reminder so that there is no possible way that anybody say they didn't know. The test opens tomorrow at 11:30. The test closes tomorrow at 12:45. You have 35 minutes to complete it. Your test yourself questions are due anytime between now and the end of class tomorrow. We will begin and continue on with chapter 3, which is on my Moodle. Comments, questions, concerns. Have a fabulous weekend. Enjoy your lunch. Midterm is going to meet in here.